love conversation, so I don't want to feel like I'm talking to you. I love group conversations, so if you have any questions or anything like that, please don't be afraid to ask. I'd be more than willing to listen in, because we all have something to teach and we all have something to learn. I go day by day, living life, remaining a student. In order to be a teacher, you must remain a student, and so I'm always learning. The name actually, nomadic, comes from its wordplay, knowledge-based nomad, which is me taking my identity, which is Somali, and mixing it with my Canadian identity. Because if I was to run around with a bunch of camels and goats right now, you'd think I was crazy. So instead of that, I'm herding words, and so that's where the wordplay comes from. I was born in Somalia. My family moved to Italy when I was about 4 years of age. Stayed in a Catholic boarding school for about 2 years because my parents couldn't afford some place for us to stay. And it was challenging, to say the least, because as a Muslim, especially from being in a country of your colonizer, they didn't really look at us like respected. It's not to say the people, it's more to say the government, right? Because you can't blame a group of people. It's always the people that are in power, usually, that have the authority to behave certain ways. So I'm a Catholic boarding school, and it was different because as a Muslim, and I was, as a young kid, I was proudly identifying as a Muslim at 4 years of age. And the nuns didn't like that because they used to bring us pork, and I would say, I don't want to eat the pork. And they'd get mad, like, oh, how dare you? You come to our country, you ran away from your stuff, and now you want to eat our food, type of thing. But it only taught me, because my father was very optimistic at a young age. He taught us to value optimism. And he said, you don't control the world, you control how you interact with it, which was really beneficial for me, because being somebody who is different, it's good to know, because there's a lot of adversity that is put in your way. And I never liked the poor me perspective, because we're all going through struggles, right? Every single person has their own struggles. My struggle is not any bigger or better than your struggle is. And so I use my struggles as a point of reference, something to grow from. It's not something that hinders me or something that holds me back. I love fighting the system. I do a lot of community work. I sit on a lot of community boards. I work with a lot of youth in correctional facilities. I work with a lot of youth, quote unquote, at-risk youth, more like disenfranchised youth, because in reality they're not at risk, they're just not accepted or not valued. And my perspective is everybody is of equal nature, nobody's higher than anybody, nobody's more superior. We all deserve a perspective. And going to these students and going to these youth that are incarcerated, a lot of times you realize they're bright, they're super smart, they're talented, just nobody believes in them. I was very fortunate, because when I came to Canada, English was my third language, but I had lost my Somali completely. All I knew how to speak was Italian, because I lived in a Catholic boarding school. And so I had to relearn my language, because my parents said, listen, when you're at home, the only thing you're allowed to speak is Somali. When you're outside of these doors, speak whatever you want. They knew I was going to lose the Italian, but to them, it's that Bob Marley perspective. How do you know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from? And so they wanted me to retain my culture, my heritage, and my language. And so they made me relearn it through this rigorous process. Thankfully, I did learn it. I know how to read, write, and speak my language fluently. I'm very fortunate for that. I lost my Italian completely. However, I learned English as well. And at the beginning, people made fun of me a lot. They used to call me things like FOB, which means fresh off the boat. The more English I realized, the more I realized I was FOP, which means fresh off the plane. Christopher Columbus came on a boat, not me. And so these really started empowering me. And so the English language, I found out the power of words. Words change people. Words can affect your psychology. They can affect your chemistry. They have huge impact on how we behave. And in the modern day nowadays, where the internet makes it so accessible for everybody to have their opinion, it's a dangerous thing. Because if we're just consuming everybody's opinion as fact, it's detrimental to critical thinking. Because critical thinking back in the days was a lot more challenging, because if you read something in a paper, you'd have to go read a book about it. You'd have to go speak to some specialist. Now, you go on the internet, you type anything, boom, got a million opinions on it. And I would assume 99.9% of it is opinion and not fact at all. And people these days have gotten lazy. Human beings, we love comfort. We don't ever like to grow, and the truth is growth comes when you're uncomfortable. That is the true pinnacle of growth, is when you're uncomfortable, when you have to come to a new country, when you have to leave everything you believed in, when you're in a hard relationship. That's when the true growth happens. If you're comfortable, you're comfortable. You're complicit. you're complacent, you don't want to do anything. You have to challenge yourself at all times. And so for me, the English language was a point of challenge, because my father would say, the greatest form of revenge is success. If you want to hurt somebody that is oppressing you, succeed, because that's what they don't want you to do. Fighting them only puts you in a detrimental position. Fighting only makes you look bad. But if you succeed, if you go above and beyond what they thought you couldn't do, that hurts even more. Plus, you also benefited, and at the same time, you're not hurting anybody. And so I went too hard on the English language. I love wordplay. I love double entendres. As you hear in one of my poems, I say, growing up, my parents couldn't afford toys, so they lectured us. And so I learned to play with words instead of toys. And so I love double entendres. Hello. And so I love wordplay. My poems contain a lot of wordplay. The funny thing is, I went from being struggling. There's a chair right there if you'd like to sit.
Okay, right there.
I went from being this person who was struggling to now my full-time income is poetry, which is weird because English is my third language, but I make my income off of poetry. I travel internationally to do poetry. I was recently in Sudan. The funny thing is, I make the joke, I ran away from Africa because of war. I ran back because of art. And it's a beautiful thing that you get to do what you love. For my mental health, is great because the most valuable thing on this planet is time. And if you're doing something you're not happy with, you're wasting your time. And my father would always tell me, become an engineer, because you know how immigrant parents, right? Become an engineer, become a doctor, become a pharmacist, become a lawyer, do that. But I knew what my parents were saying was succeed. They weren't saying this is the only way to succeed, but they associate money with happiness too often, and those things don't correlate, right? If you're happy and you have money, great. But if you're not happy and you have money, you're never going to be happy regardless. That money isn't going to quench your thirst. It isn't going to make you happier. Money doesn't, it's not the source of happiness. Money supports happiness, but it isn't the source. Happiness comes from doing what you love at all times and being able to do it freely. And so for me, poetry was revenge. It was a form of success. It was a form of liberation, because now I get to travel, which is weird enough. I'm in TerraceBC, like out of all the places in the world, I'm here right now, right? For poetry, which is it's poetic in its own self. And so I'll share a couple of poems with y'all, and then we can have conversations, because I'd love to learn from you as well. My life story isn't any greater than yours is. I'm just up here right now. You could be as well. And so, yeah, I'll share a couple of poems. So double entendre is wordplay. The funny thing is, my poetry is no longer accessible for like extremely newcomers, because it's so, the level of language that I use, and also the wordplay, the metaphors and stuff like that, isn't really accessible, and it's challenging. So I'm learning to rewrite from a perspective that is accessible, because my wordplay is too much. An example is, me and my friends joke around, like, yo, I'm gonna beat you up. I say, you know, chicken dudes get barbecued. If you want to meet up, know your life's at stake, and if your friends have beef, they can get their stew. And so it says so much with so little, and that's what I love about double entendres. And another example is, my friends call me salmon because I fight the flow, only dead fish follow the current. And so it just continuously explaining to them in such a small amount of way of saying so much. And so this first poem I'm going to share with you is called Nomadic, is where I got my name from. I was born November 28th, 1984. It was a Wednesday. A sign my mother says I was destined to hold the week together, but she told me to never become complacent, because success, she says, comes in Friday casual and never came in Monday blues. The moment I was born, my mother proclaimed me Ahmed, an Arabic name which is supposed to mean one who constantly thanks God. But ever since 9/11, it means sketchy welfare scamming, immigrant terror pirate. And you know what? That's it. Everybody give me your attention. I have lessons of mass instructions, and I'm ready to blow all of y'all away with my talent, because truthfully, I'm just an African trying to make in this entertainment industry. Man, I barely blow anything out of proportion. But let's take in a moment of silence, how I can no longer take my career to the United States to blow up, how I'm able to break into parks without being detained, how I can no longer hold your attention hostage without raising suspicion. Now I know the name Ahmed doesn't encompass my history, and that is why I adopted the name Nomadic to carry my Somali tradition. It means knowledge-based nomad, because one of my grandfathers was a farmer, the other a nomad herding animals. I can be neither in the city, so I have adapted to planting ideas that feed thoughts and harvesting emotions while traveling and making a living off of words that are heard. Now my mother jokes that even my spirit is a nomad, and that my poems are much like a caravan, because she said even my words are moving. But the thing is, growing up we couldn't afford toys, so they replaced them with endless amount of stories. And because I had nothing else, I played with monster truck metaphors and action hero alliterations and linguistic spars with my friends and family, facilitated to further perfect my powerful punchlines. But it was my mother's gentle intellect that eased the understanding of how raising points is far more superior than raising fists, and that money has nothing to do with the process of becoming enriched. So now, I invest my time in people. And my grandparents may no longer be here, but I'll continue to embody in their dreams. That means even if I had to enter the pen to start a sentence, I would write my way back into the world to finish the poem my grandfathers had started. So here I am, a nomad on a journey, trying not to settle with names like pirate, warlord, or terrorist. And it's obvious that my history is too rich for those proven judgment. They're unable to digest my truths, so they throw up all these slurs. And I thought it would change with age, but I had to take my expectations to rehab because they were too damn high. And even though I try to sober them with thoughts, they continue to take shots. Now me, I may not be the king of beers, but I'm wiser, so I'll stick to my round of applause, because if there's anything I've learned in these 32 years of life, is that it's all about outlook. So we're to Microsoft, and I'm going to continue to excel until I reach my PowerPoint. Signing off. And so within my poems, one thing that my father told me early on when I first started performing, I started originally in theater, and my parents were like, no, Ahmed, don't, no, not theater, like become a lawyer, go to school for whatever. I said, you know what, fine. The thing is though, the challenge with that was my parents, when I was 16, my parents went back to Somalia. They left. So when we left Somalia, there was 4 of us, me and my 3 older brothers. And so when we came to Edmonton, we moved to Kitchener, Ontario within a year because Edmonton was cold. It was all goodness. And coming from Italy, it was not a good place to start. So we went to Kitchener. Kitchener was cold and it was extremely racist, so it wasn't any better. The high school that I went to, in fact, their mascot was a rebel with the Confederate flag. That's how serious it was. And I didn't realize this until after I had moved away in 2003. But we grew up in a very hostile atmosphere. But thanks to my parents, I never looked at it as hostility. I looked at it as fertilizer. Because these people wanted to oppress me and I wasn't going to allow them to do that. And so I succeeded. However, though, the challenge was my parents were gone. They went to Somalia. They took my 2 little brothers and sisters that were born in Kitchener, and they went back. They said they wanted to teach them their culture, their heritage. They said we were able to retain ours, but they wanted to teach them theirs. And so I said, cool. And I said, well, what am I going to do? They're like, well, good luck. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, sayonara. I was like, okay. I'm like, how am I going to survive? They're like, well, my dad said this, and I never understood it then because he was an amateur philosopher, but he's professional in the same sense. He said, you've never struggled and you've never starved before. Good luck. And I was like, if you wanted me to starve and struggle, why did you take me out of Somalia? That's the perfect opportunity for me to starve and struggle, right? But he's like, see, you don't understand yet. And my dad was the type of mentor that I value and that I look for nowadays, is the type of mentors that don't build you, they give you the tools to build yourself. And so my dad was always about, hey, you know what? Go learn yourself. You don't know what I mean, but go learn by yourself. And I'm grateful he said those words, because at first I was upset with him. But then I realized afterwards what he had meant is I've never had a reason to go seek for anything. Everything was always in front of me. There was always food. There was always information. There was always access to anything. And with my parents, they didn't like that, but that's what they brought us here for as well. So it was challenging for them. Because again, when you're comfortable, you don't grow, right? When you're comfortable, you become complacent, you become complicit. Growth does not happen when you're comfortable. Even now, as an artist, I'm getting a little comfortable because now I'm to the point where I'm succeeding, and I've succeeded very well, but that's not good for me. I need to get back to a point where I feel like my identity's in danger. I have to be in a position where I feel like I might not succeed, because otherwise you stagnate, and then once you stagnate, then you just fade to black, right? You're gone and it's over and done with. And so I continuously try to challenge myself, especially with my poetry. So my parents are gone. I'm living in Kitchener, Ontario with this system that's completely racist. I'm going to high school. There was 60 when I left, and so by the time I was 17, I was getting into trouble. I had already gotten in trouble with the law. I got in trouble for some very petty stuff, but I still got in trouble with the law. I was trying to affiliate with my friends, and so here I am in high school one day, and I was playing cards with my friends. because a bunch of us immigrants. Kitchener had a lot of immigrant people from Serbia, Somalia, Iran, Iraq, everywhere. It doesn't matter, but we used to hang out together. But I had a lot of friends. I was a school clown. I was in theater. I was in basketball. I was all over the place. So anyways, here I am in school, and I'm playing cards with my friends, and one of my good friends named Mike turns up the music extremely loud. My friends look at me like, yo, what's Mike doing? So I go up to Mike. I'm like, yo, Mike, please turn that down, bro. There's no problem. I got you. I'm like, thank you, Mike. I go back to the table. So I'm playing with cards with my friends, and then we get loud, and then Mike turns his music up louder. So Mike was only doing this because we're being loud. It's not Mike's fault, right? It's actually our fault. My friends look at me like, are you gonna take that on me? That's your friend. He doesn't even listen to you. And I'm like, what? I walk up to him, yo, Mike, turn that shit down right now. And Mike goes, if you don't like it, go back to your country. And they called me the N-word. And I've known this guy for 4 years of my life. And so what hurt me the most was that I trusted him, right? When I said that to him, I expected him to be like, yo, Ahmed, shut up. Like, you guys are being loud or whatever. But I didn't expect the N-word, right? It's like, this is a person I trusted. And before I even knew what I did, boom, I punched Mike. And as soon as it's almost like a slow motion. As soon as I punched Mike, my fist hit his girlfriend, ran to the office. The principal, it was instantaneous. The principal came down. I got taken to the office. They called the police because they just brought forward that zero tolerance policy, like no violence at all. Doesn't matter what happens. If you hit anybody, you do any action, you're out, right? And so here I am about to get expelled from school. The police officers get called. The police comes, and he's a very rude cop. There's obviously this power hunger that he had, and at that young age I didn't realize it because it took me much longer to learn that sometimes when people are power hungry, just give it to them. You still succeed, right? You don't lose nothing. But I was young, and I didn't know that then. And so I was talking back to him and stuff, and then he deliberately waited until lunchtime to when the bell rang to take me out to the hallway so everybody could see me. And this was embarrassing because that's not who I was, right? This is not me. This is not my character. I'm the class clown. I'm the Joker. And so as we're going to the hallway and we're walking down, everybody's looking at me like, oh, this Harvey's going, whatever. One of my good friends who knows what's going on in my personal life looks at me and smiles and laughs because he knows I messed up, right? He knows there's something way beyond. He knows this isn't me, that what he sees is not me. He knows there's something behind it, and he's laughing at that. And I laugh with him, and the cop got really mad. And so I wrote this poem because of what happened from that situation, and it goes like this. I was 17 when I got arrested. There was nothing cool about the moments that led to it either. I didn't get arrested for robbing a bank or anything cool like that. Now I know what you're thinking, what's so cool about robbing a bank? Nothing. But as far back as I can remember, man, I've always wanted to be where money made me feel like I didn't have to worry about walking 45 minutes to rest my head, where I no longer had to lie to my friends about having just eaten. But in that instance of me thinking about robbery and bank, thoughts of my dad promising to run across the ocean fast enough to alter space and time just to kick my ass crossed my mind. Now my father, he was in Somalia at the time, but he could have been in another planet, but somehow he was never too far for a lesson. Always close enough to stress the importance of struggle and how struggle is the essence of success. And that success is much like a tree, he would say, because it takes a tree years to build branches at least big enough to fully appreciate sunlight. Everything that's worth something takes time, he would say. Now my father, he'd often stretch the truth to teach me a lesson, but he never lied. And this only helped solidify that smile carved down my face. And noticing my smile like handcuffing me, the officer didn't hesitate to ask me if I thought this was funny. Now Dave Chappelle and SpongeBob, that's funny, right? But this is more like a soap opera. I drama with each episode leading to more confusion. Sometimes it doesn't matter who you are, it's hard to accept what is foreign. So how do I translate the weight of expectations placed on a 17-year-old Somali boy's shoulders who can barely carry his life in his wallet? Now at this moment, I'm assuming I'm either thinking of NWA or Martin Luther King, because before I could realize how badly my brain just trolled me, the words "F the police" escaped my mouth. And like a volcano, he erupted. His composure could be seen flying that way. His reasoning, flying that way. And over him, a thick cloud of superiority was growing, and his words, "You good for nothing," burned just like lava. Now guilty until proven innocent, right? Well, he's just proven guilty for overlooking my innocence. So without hesitation, I applied damn right to the conversation, and then he handcuffs me tighter, not knowing this is a point of comfort for me. This is the closest that I've gotten to embrace since my parents left when I was 16. These handcuffs aren't confinement. My apartment is visit it. Inside you will find my jail cell. A naked apartment stripped of its youth. No television, no couches. I don't rest my head on a pillow. Just a mattress with no record to sleep. When I brush my teeth, it's with watered down toothpaste. When I shower, it's with dish soap. Check the cabinets. There are no traces of dishes there. just a pot of tea on the stove that whistles reminding me that sometimes things are going to get hot and I'm allowed to scream, but I should step aside and everything will be cool once again. But nothing prepared me for the waterfalls that ran down my face. I so badly want to ask him if he's ever prayed into an empty fridge, hoping miracles to happen every 5 minutes you checked. If he's ever philosophized as to whenever you're looking for spoons, why is it that all you can find is forks? I so badly want to show my struggle is stitched to the fabric of my khakis. People accuse me of wearing day in and out, and how much like my shoes, my soul was beginning to wear out. He didn't deserve these tears, but maybe they were necessary sacrifice for this situation. Because as he lowered me into the cop car, much like a rainbow after a storm, a smile began to show, and like the kettle I began to cool, because my optimistic father popped into my head saying, Ahmed, hey, listen, you're innocent, and at least you get to eat a free meal tonight. Thank you. So I'm grateful for both my parents because of their endless optimism. I've always found it that if you look at humor, if you look at the most successful comedians, they're either Jewish, black, Indian, right? Because they struggle, right? Struggle brings out humor in people, and I know it's not good to judge, like be prejudiced like that, be like, oh, they're the funny groups. But in reality, when you look at it, majority of comedians are from countries that have struggled, right? Or people that have struggled. Because what humor does for you is a way to express yourself without offending anybody or without being accountable to your own struggles, because it makes you laugh at the situation. Because again, you don't control the world, you control how you interact with it. And as a successful artist, a lot of times the circles that I'm around, I'm the only black person. I'm the only colored person, in fact, right? And it's not to say that the people that are around the table are racist. No, it's the system in which we operate is racist, right? I almost look at it in the perspective of, say there was once a power plant that was nuclear, and they get rid of it, and many years nothing happens there, and eventually somebody buys it and grows corn. That corn is tainted. Even if the corn grows well and it becomes nice corn, it looks well, it still has some what's it called, some nuclear stuff in it, right? It's radioactive. Thank you very much. It's still radioactive. It still has some traces of radioactivity. And that's a fact. And it's not to say that the corn is to blame, it's the system in which the corn grew. And that's where I find racism. Whenever often I approach people about it, they're like, I'm not racist. I'm like, I did not even say that you were. I'm talking about the system right now. And if you believe that you are racist and you're already defending yourself, you need to sit back, have a little bit of prayer, meditate, and think about why you're defending yourself so quickly. Because it isn't about you, it's a system we're talking about. But when people, again, the comfort comes from when you benefit from a system that is racist, oftentimes you feel accountable for that. And you don't want to change. Change is uncomfortable. Nobody wants to change. And the joke that I make is I say the professional world is like mountain climbing. The higher up you go, the wider and lonelier it gets. And sometimes, in all honesty, and sometimes it's a fact, because if you think about it metaphorically too, you have to gear up, right? Like you have to put your oxygen tank on. Metaphorically speaking, you have to put your boots on, you have to put your snow pants on, your snow clothes on, your mitts. That's the reality. You have to constantly fight, because for me, oftentimes, I don't like talking about it because people think, oh, the race card again. But in reality, there are instances where you look around like, did that person just say this? Like, does it happen? Like, this is my, thankfully right now I'm currently Edmonton's Poet Laureate. I got nominated twice before this. And each time people would say things that were extremely racist, but they didn't realize it. Because again, the system doesn't really benefit them to learn from that. But when you approach them and they say things like, oh, I don't see colors, you're like how do you educate somebody? How do you educate somebody about how you feel of the challenges that are unfair that you're facing when the retaliation is I don't see color right away, right? And this is coming from a city councilor that said this as well. So when I did the thing, I did the interview, I made it to the last thing, and then the counselor asked me, he's like, will your religion hinder you being a poet laureate? So I looked around like, am I the only one to hear this right now? Like, are you serious? I'm like, no, I wouldn't. But how do I tell this person, yo, stop saying that, that's racist? Like, how can you, especially when you're not in a position of power, you need this, I want this, right? So you can't really retaliate. And people don't understand, though, that when you're put in that system, it's challenging to speak out. And then as an immigrant, and you go to my mom, and I'm like, yo, mom, they're being racist. And my mom is, after immigrants are like bootstrap mentality. Like, listen, if it wasn't meant for you, you're not going to get it. Don't worry about it. Don't use that as an excuse. Try again. You know what I mean? That's the mentality. But it's there. But again, my mother isn't saying it's not there. She's just saying, I know, but you can't do anything about it other than succeeding, right? And God bless my mother. She was right, because at that time, again, this was the second time around, I didn't get it. And the reason I didn't get it is they said because I wasn't a traditional poet. And I said to them, whose tradition are we talking about? My tradition or your tradition? Because traditionally speaking, I am a spoken word poet, I am a literary poet, and for my community, I am the poet. But are you talking about Shakespeare? Are you talking about Margaret Atwood? Are you talking about Robert Frost? I'm like, yeah, I've learned about them and I can write poetry too, but you're overlooking that because of who I am. They never look at me. They don't understand that I'm published. My poems are taught in schools in Ontario and in Halifax. They don't know that my poems are taught in refugee camps in Kenya. They don't know that. All they know is that, oh, I'm a spoken word poet. They're looking for traditional poets. And it's funny to me because I just laugh, right? It's like, LOL. Anyways, so I didn't get that. I didn't get the position, and then I go to celebrate the person who did get it, because the person had nothing to do with the process, right? So I went to celebrate that person, and when I got there, one of the jurors, no word of a lie, comes up to me and goes, you know what? I love your energy. Says nothing about my poetry. He's like, I love your energy. You have fantastic energy. He's like, but you know what? Maybe you're not a poet laureate. Maybe you're a bard. People in African Arabia are bards. Maybe you're a bard, Ahmed. And I was like, I left with the mentality that the people in the jury were racist, but I wasn't going to let it drown me out, and I came here to celebrate, and you're going to bring this crap to me right now? Like, I looked around, I was like, am I the only one to hear this guy right now again? But again, you got to be like, thank you. You know what I mean? I appreciate it. You know, what else can you say? Like, right, look him dead in the eye, like, yo, move away with that racist. But you can't, right? Because, again, it's not him. I'm not blaming him. I'm blaming in the system in which he grew up with. He was a much older gentleman. So I didn't get it. This time came around, and then I did get it. And the funny thing was, this year was the first, I just got July, so I've only been 4 months for Poet Laureate. And then my mother, which validates my mother, this is the first year that it went from a 5,000 honorarium to a 10,000 honorarium a year. And my mom's like, see? I told you. And you're like, oh, come on, like, it has nothing to do with it. But again, it reinforces our perspective that my mom taught me, which is things will happen accordingly. You just got to work hard, right? It's that bootstrap mentality, just do it. Because the more time you invest in something, the better you get at it. Time is the most valuable thing on it. Just don't be jailed, because then you don't own your time anymore. That is the form of slavery. Don't listen to other people's opinion without gaining your own facts first. That's the definition of slavery. She's just giving me these lessons, right? And I don't, again, my parents taught me all these things, but I never understood it. But as I grew older, I started to realize, because I didn't like structure and I didn't like systems. And so I went back to Somalia when I was 18. So after that incident happened, my parents were like, I think you're ready. Like, as I went to the wilderness, like, you're ready now, my son. Come along with me, right? So my family put some money together to take me back to Somalia. And I'm telling you, Somalia, as a Canadian, because I was Canadian by that time, Somalia was nothing that I wanted to be associated with at all. There was people on the streets that were starving. I saw dead bodies. I saw gunfights. I saw little kids with guns. And it was devastating because there was no fire trucks. No, these securities that we can rely on, like if in case a fire happens, 911, help me out. Nothing. There is nobody to help you out. And so as soon as I got there, things like the food bank and shelters was a privilege, right? When you're in Canada and you don't have that perspective, you're like, oh, I gotta eat a food bank. It's like, I gotta stay at a shelter. That's a privilege. There are people that don't even benefit from that. There are people that don't even have that at all. So when I got back, my mind went from like pulling me like I'm this ghetto kid to like, my friends are like, what's wrong with you? Like, why is everything so positive with you? But I'm like, yo, listen, you don't know what I saw, right? Like, there's struggle going on down there. And it's not to say that their struggle should be my learning, but no, I saw that, and I'm grateful for what I have here in Canada. And so it made me strive to be even a better human being. And then I started getting involved in community work. I started mentoring youth. I started getting mentored by elders. I started connecting with indigenous elders. I started connecting with elders from all different communities. I started volunteering in community leagues because I realized that for me, the best learning would be from other people. People are poems. Everybody has a story to tell, right? Everybody has a story, but not everyone's a storyteller. And then my responsibility is not to speak for people, but to empower people to speak. And so I go to communities and I provide them ways to tell their stories, because their stories are just as valuable as mine, right? That's what's beautiful. Back in the days, we used to have like circles and we used to chat, conversate about everything. Now we're always chasing money back to back to back. We're so busy that we don't even have time to self-reflect and even think about who we are. And we go and get visas and passports, like these are the only borders we need to cross. But in our mind, every day we're crossing, or we're not even actually crossing these borders. We're stopping our own selves at checkpoints. Do I look good enough today? Am I smart enough? Like, do I belong here? Am I still an immigrant? There's so many checkpoints that we don't have visas or passports to because we don't realize that they're going on in our brain. The psychology that I went to school for political science and psychology. I didn't graduate because I got poetry became my full-time thing. But one thing I really loved about psychology is that it strengthened and gave terminology to what my father and my mother were saying. They would always say, work hard, strive towards stuff. The more you do, the better you get at it. And the reality is neural pathways are specific for you learning. So right now when you first start, remember how you see a deer when it first gets born, it's like all over the place falling, but within a few days it walks like it's no problem? Because the brain builds a pathway for your knowledge. It consolidates, it takes that information and goes, wait, this is important. Ahmed needs to do this. But if you don't realize that the negative stuff around you does the exact same, like the way you treat yourself, the way you talk about yourself, your self-esteem, and how you look at yourself, it's exactly the same thing. Now me, I'm not the best poet in the world. I'll admit that. But I'm the best AKnowmadic there will ever be. Because there is never going to be another me. There will never, ever, on the face of earth, be another me. So why would I ever imitate somebody else? Or why would I try to replicate people? Why would I be a carbon copy when I can be the original? And so when I go to places, I'm happy, I'm confident, but I'm not conceited, right? I'm confident because I know that I'm the only me. And a lot of times people will be like, oh man, what is it about you? Like, why are you so? I was like, yo, because life is great. First of all, I have food to eat. You know what I mean? I have shelter. I live in Canada, which is fantastic. And I'm privileged enough to know that I'm unique in my own sense, right? And I value my own self. There's this trick that this motivational speaker did one day that completely blew my mind. Because I always believed, you know, your parents say, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge too? You know, your mom, your parents say that? There's nothing tangible to support that, but then this guy did this and it changed my life. Because it says in Islamic tradition, if you hang around a perfume shop all day, you're gonna end up smelling like perfume. And if you end up in a blacksmith all day, you're gonna end up smelling like smoke. That's a reality of it. And your atmosphere is the exact same. It's not just what we eat that makes our body what it is. It's what we consume visually, auditory, all these things change us and make us who we are. Do this for a second. I want you to try this. Go like this. I want you to take this and put it underneath your chin really quickly. I said your chins. Everybody put on their cheeks. Everybody put on their cheeks. A few people, somebody might have put it on their chin, but like the reality is, most people are gonna put it on their cheek. It's because it's what we see. Human beings, we learn visually. And you know when they say that actions speak louder than words, they're not joking. It's real. And so when you're around people who are being negative all day, right, who are being hurtful all day, you become that. And it's a reality. And that's one thing I learned early on as well. My parents used to tell me, like, your best friends are books. Your best friends are books. Other people, they just want to take advantage of you. I'm like, Mom, come on, you're being so evil right now, right? But what they meant was, but so it's the truth. My mom, now I know what they meant. People aren't against you, they're for themselves. So if they see you succeeding, they're going to be upset that they're not succeeding. They don't hate you for succeeding. They're just saying, why can't I have that? That's human mentality. We always envy other people. If we see somebody succeeding, majority of people, not all, there's some great people in this world, but majority of people, when you see somebody succeeding or somebody gets an accomplishment or one of your friends wins the award, you're like, I think like that. You know what I mean? You're not saying they're not deserving of it. You're just saying, I want that award. But you got to work for it, and not everybody's going to get the same awards, right? There are things that your friends guaranteed are saying, how the hell did they get that? It's the same way. And so that perspective changes that you don't have enemies. You have people who want to be just as successful as you are, but can't achieve it. And so you have to continuously strive and change your own perspective to not allow other people to influence whether you're going to make it or not. Right? It's a reality. So I'm going to share another poem really quickly before I talk too much here. This poem was when I got back from Somalia. People are like, oh, you went to Somalia? I'm like, yeah. They're like, you're not scared of pirates and warlords? And then I wrote this poem for them. They asked if I was scared of pirates and warlords. Not as much as crooked lawyers and politicians, I said. Sneaky briefcase bandits are no different than gangsters except the Habahan suits. Just like the governments were presidents and parliaments, the Habahan troops. 21st century, wolves in sheep's clothing, bunch of rich men who claim that they're chosen, leaving deep wounds in their pocket because money to them has become God, and God is known to make profits, and prophets don't lie, they know. So they add a couple of extra O's in your salaries to keep it quiet and lay low.
And if you're chasing that check, man, you better be quiet unless they say so. But while you chasing that cash, what you lack is a reality check. Confined behind a desk, cubicles as jail cells, and what's a tie but an upside down noose around their necks? And isn't it ironic we sell a youth for wealth? By the time we accumulate that cash, old as heck, we use that money for health, pension plans, and retirement? Bull, I hung my jersey when I was 16 and retired it. And the government jails the youth for the so-called war on drugs for selling some weed. But I can walk into a pharmacy and get drugs from a dealer in a lab coat if I need. And don't forget about the side effects. While we focus on the physical, this system has breaches of mental viruses. Point away from the problem, blame an innocent victim. Like the good dogs we are, we follow orders and sick them. Cast the elders in homes where there's nobody to listen. These Tom Cruises are backwards, they make that pious order an impossible mission. Plus they got the youth in the hood thinking, give your word and keep it, never start snitching, find homies who can keep 6, stay alive, but when it comes to prayers, none of them can keep 5. Instead they're on the corner of the block selling rock holding 9s, and face it, east like Mecca and Medina, these suckers are giving us no love while they're serving aces like Vanessa and Serena. And the government expects me to jump through hoops to get a scholarship for hoops to get my education. But if I slip up, they'll gladly pay for a whole year of my incarceration, because they know the only rights left we exercise is during procrastination. But like a doctor known for malpractice, man, I'm starting to lose patience. And this psychology has become a major, and they made a minor out of our histories, but they've forgotten we were born bachelors of life, and our African ancestors worked hard for their masters, but what has that done for us? Nothing, because when we graduate, all we're left with is a PhD, a pretty huge debt. Thank you.
Oh.
So are there any questions? I can just dive into the next thing. Are there any questions?
Is your family still in Somalia?
Well, my dad goes back. He gets seasonal depression, so he goes back from October to April. So he just left the 16th, right after that incident happened, which was weird. There was a huge thing that happened in Somalia. We went right back. The trauma that my family had faced from that struggle from before eludes the danger of the situation. But my dad looked, oh, go back to Somalia. So he's back in Somalia right now, and he'll be back in April. I don't think he'd ever be able to live here with the rain consistent like this. I can't even do it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Snow is one thing.
You just hit the special rain.
Oh my goodness. Snow is one thing, but at least in Edmonton, it's always sunny, right? Like, no matter how cold it gets, it's always sunny. So you can be indoors where it's warm and the sun shines outside. You're like, this is great. But here, you can be warm inside and still be like, why do I feel like crap right now? Right? What's going on? You know?
Sat lamps.
Yeah? Yeah.
Full spectrum light.
Oh yeah, no, it's necessary. I know.
Vitamin D.
This would be for me. I love visiting British Columbia, but I don't think I could ever live here. But I'm always grateful to be here as well, because you guys are surrounded by so much wildlife and wilderness. You know, that's a privilege in itself as well. And Edmonton is just flat. There's just prairies everywhere you look. But Edmonton is still a great city, regardless, because it's a city full of opportunity and growth, and so that's good. So I'll share a humorous poem with you. Because when I got back from Somalia, I was completely optimistic about everything, and before I had left, I was questioning my parents as to why I got the worst of the genes in the family, and I'll explain through this poem. As of late, I realized that I'm dealing with 2 recessions, the economy and my hairline. Now the hairline would be fine, but in these hard times, I can't afford a plate to put food on. That's if I could afford food to chew on. Things aren't like they used to be back in the days, you know, where people used to see me eye to eye. Now, it's more like eyes to hair. Just that quick little glance up to let me know that they know that what I was dealing with is still happening, that my forest once thick like the jungles are being eradicated by genetics. And because of this, I'm starting to do things that are strange. Now, I look for friends that are shorter than me, but not too short, so I don't snub to reveal my shame. And forget Rogaine, I'm not using any product short of Frogaine. I tried everything, but my self-esteem just isn't growing, if you know what I mean. I even seriously considered joining the army because everybody has to shave, right? But then I drew back because I realized that how I would have to salute or wave. My forehead starts back here, by the way. Oh. I even thought about diverting attention with high fashion clothes, but I can't afford those. A gap between my hairs and eyes, it seems my hairs, they leave eyes because of my genes. If my ESL teacher was here right now, he'd be like, yo, Ahmed, that was an amazing double entendre. So I'm talking about clothes and hair, right? I said a gap between my hairs and eyes, it seems my hairs, they leave eyes because of my genes. And even during interviews, my hairline gets all of the attention. All right, Ahmed. In comparison to all the other applicants, your resume looks to be the thinnest. Nevertheless, how far back would you say your experiences go? and going off the top of your head, what's your greatest weakness? All right, Ahmed, everything seems to be fine here. If you could just do us a favor and sign the thin line at the bottom, using his ballpoint pen, we can be on our way. I can already tell you're going to shine at the head office. See, I don't know why I complain though. I have friends that have been there with me through thick and especially thin, who don't put me on like a wig and go way back like my hairline. So truthfully, I just have my priorities twisted like dreads. And I know I'm not the only one out here. Some of the fellas feel me, and if not, they sure to feel that breeze on that bald spot. So they better learn to get used to it, because regardless if the economy gets better or not, there's no growing back to how it used to be. Thank you. One thing that they really hated about me when I was younger is I used to ask too many questions, but there's no such thing as too many questions. My parents taught me questions are the keys that open the doors for knowledge. Ask questions all the time. Now, I got a question for you. How many people here knock on wood? For like bad luck or whatever. How many people here know where it comes from?
No.
Why do you do it? And that's what I meant. Like, we don't ask enough questions. We just, that's this psychology that I was telling you about. There is so much we do. We don't know why we do it. We just do it because it's been done before. That's the way it's been done.
That's what our parents teach us.
You know, but it comes from many different ways as well. Like, it comes from our friends, our family, our parents, our communities, right? There are so many things that have absolutely no benefit for us, or even if they do have benefit, we just don't have the knowledge behind it. And it's good to ask, well, like, why am I doing this for right now? And the thing about knocking on wood, it comes from many different cultures. It's Romania, it comes from Greece, there's everywhere. But the fact is, we don't ask, why am I doing this? People do it, knock on wood, I'm doing it too. But it's always good to ask questions. And so this rap poem I'm about to share, it's about asking questions, because that's the only way you will learn, is always ask questions. Somebody tells you to do something, say why, right? What can go wrong? They'll explain it. They might get upset that they have to explain themselves, but who cares? That's how you learn. So I said, have you ever felt lost in a room full of maps? Or been in a cubicle with a passport in hand that's naked and stamped? I have, and it gives me the cramps. Or have you ever been to a library, which is supposed to be this database of knowledge, but instead, it's only used for quotes for university or college? Crazy logic. Or are we consider those whose dollars don't make sense psychotic? Sort of like we think slavery has been abolished, when in actuality it's been revamped, reshaped, and polished, because we went from masters to master cards. But don't be alarmed. Just as long as you don't sell it and you feed your spirit freedom, your soul will never starve. But isn't it alarming how we traded money for essential skills like hunting and farming, as if paper and lead's going to keep us fed in a crisis when we're starving? Now, I'm not saying all of them, but the government is corrupted. The aliens are amongst us and our minds have been abducted. And this is their laboratory. We've always been test subjects, and they're not beaming us up. They're keeping us down, because these squares know the right angles just to keep us around. And that's why I'm not defined by a border or a region. The lack of order from the government, only one of the many reasons I'd never pledge allegiance. The government changing face like the weather be changing seasons, they're seedless. Funny they got branches but no roots, so how could this be treason? Sad that we believe in. A bunch of rulers, if we try to measure up, we never come out even. Now you can try to switch the metric, but they say you can't defeat me. Our life is just a game in the system they created. Makes it absolutely easy to play us. 9 to 5, the minimum wage us. And those of us who are courageous, they cage us and jail us, God save us. Man, I just hope that the system doesn't swallow me. But if I resist, they'll get a special agent to follow me, when really I'm no bad guy. But because I like to use my noodle, they consider me nutty like pad thai. Plus, 9 to 5 is the only way to make it, some say. There's no one way. I'd rather be a rapper and a poet, even if it meant I stayed underground like a subway, because then I'd still be on track, training for my final destination, because life is a big show and being yourself is the only way to prepare for that final presentation. Thank you very much.